Welcome to this presentation, the orientation for our course. So let's get started. I'm going to go to our course location. This is where we'll start. This is the first screen that you'll see. Obviously, you've been able to make progress and actually have gotten into our course. So this is territory that you're already familiar with. But this is the starting point where you go into the class, going into the case. It'll list over here items that are coming up that are due in the next week. You also have a button that says View Calendar. You can either click here or you can click here, and that will list in calendar form all the things that are coming up. I'm just going to click on it so you can get exposed to it a little bit. I'm going to go ahead. Obviously, I'm doing this in May, so we'll go ahead to June, and you'll see all of the due dates are here. My suggestion, and by the way, before we get too far on this, please pause me now if you haven't already done this, and get a notepad and a pen or paper so you can jot down some important things to keep in mind. I don't want you to have to watch this video multiple times, and so if you take some careful notes now, you won't have to go through and listen to me more than once, which might not be the most fun way to spend your day. Okay, so first thing that I encourage you to write down is calendar everything. These due dates are not going to be moving. They're written in stone. There's not going to be any extensions, and so might as well go ahead and write all these due dates down in your calendar. This is especially important over the summer. I mean, it's important during long semesters too, but in the summers we have so many things that are going to be due that it's just not possible for one person to keep all these deadlines in their head. And it's not just that you have to calendar the due dates and wake up, say on the morning of June 11th and say, oh, look, I've got these things to do. Actually, June 11th isn't an especially difficult morning, but let's go down to June 18th. You can see we have 5 things due. There is no way that you're going to be able to get all those things done if you start at 10 a.m. on June 10th June 18th, and you haven't made significant progress on these tasks. So you'll have to plan out and think, when am I going to get started on this project? So I encourage you to look at least a week ahead and say, oh, you know what? On Tuesday, during lunch, I got about 30 minutes, so I'll work on this project then. On Thursday, I got a little bit of time between when I get off work and when I'm going to eat dinner. I've got about an hour there, so I'm going to work on this project. So I encourage you not just to calendar these dates, but calendar when you're going to need or when you're going to have time available to work on these projects. I'm going to go back now to our course. So we're back to our place, but that's an important button to know about. View Calendar. You can either click here or you can click on this calendar button, and that will show you all of the due dates. This will just list for the next week. Right now we don't show anything because we're not that close to the beginning of the semester. This can be helpful, but keep in mind, especially if you have vacation plans or things along those lines, you'll need to look more than 1 week in advance. As I said before, and please write this down too, I do not accept late work. That is a hard and fast rule. I've only accepted late work a handful of times, and that's when there was a catastrophic problem with Canvas or Blackboard. The fact that you've had a computer problem or that you've had a crisis in work or that you've had an illness, in most cases is not going to result in you getting an extension. So please don't think in those terms. Many times people will send me an email, well, but I'm just 5 minutes late. Well, I have actually built into all the due dates an extra week of grace time. You'll see, in fact, and we'll talk more about this later, but you'll see, in fact, that the discussion boards close a week before the assignment is due. And the idea there is, you know what? I get it that sometimes you need a little extra help on an assignment. And so I give you that extra week so that you can come see me or that you can do a little bit of independent research. So in a sense, there's already built into the calendaring system a week grace period. And whenever you establish a deadline, there's got to be a minute later than that is a minute too late. So I do take the deadlines very seriously. I do that for a few reasons, and I'll talk more about this later on, but I want to just kind of explain my rationale. You don't have to agree with it, but I think it's helpful to know what the instructor is thinking. Again, the first reason is that I do give that week of grace time. So one good way of thinking about due dates is to think, hey, you know what, it's really due the week before. And you might even want to calendar that due date and try to meet that due date that's a week ahead. Or at least treat the due date maybe as, you know what, it's technically due Sunday night, but I'm going to treat it as if it's due Thursday night. And that way, if you do have that technical difficulty, no worries, you'll just have an extra day. You can finish it up on Friday or Saturday, or worst case scenario, Sunday. So if you establish due dates that are earlier, then you can be responsive to that. So keep that in mind. Be sure to work along those lines so that you won't be up against that due date. You know, we've all had computer crises in our lives. We've all had times where something isn't working, somebody's sick, maybe we're sick. If we're planning on filing something the day that it is due, we're opening ourselves up to the possibility that there will be that problem. And, you know, hopefully it won't be you that happens to, but just be aware that if you're saying, you know what, it's due on Sunday and I'm planning on submitting it on Sunday, there is a chance that something will happen. And that's going to be a consequence that unfortunately you're going to be bearing. So don't put yourself into that position. Go ahead, submit it early. Not going to face that problem. So that's one reason I don't give extensions. The second reason I don't is that a really important part of being a paralegal is knowing how to calendar things and how to meet deadlines. In fact, I think if you were to interview 100 different attorneys and ask them what is most important to them about a paralegal with whom they work, I would say the most common answer would be, boy, somebody who is on top of deadlines, who's going to make sure that we are doing what we need to do to make sure those deadlines are met. That is such an important part of the paralegal's job. I'll tell you another secret. This isn't a secret. I think many attorneys would tell you this, but it's just true that many times attorneys are not very good at managing deadlines. They're not good administrators of that type of thing. They're not very good managers. As a result, and certainly there's exceptions, there's plenty of attorneys who are good at that, but it's a pretty common problem that attorneys have of organization. And so that's why they really want a paralegal. And having somebody who will calendar those dates and follow those dates carefully, boy, that's a really, really important characteristic. And so what I'm trying to do in this course is build up those skills. Yes, there's lots of deadlines in this course. In the real world, there'll be even more deadlines, and there'll be deadlines that have greater consequences if they're missed. So consider this kind of on-the-job training, so to speak, so that you're going to experience what it's like to have hard and fast deadlines, lots of deadlines that require a lot of planning and execution to get those to the finish line. The third reason that I don't allow extensions or don't give extensions is that courts don't give extensions. If you're 5 minutes late, in many, many cases, there's no point in filing it. And as a result of you being 5 minutes late, your client may lose important legal rights and your client may sue both the law firm, perhaps you individually. You may well lose your job if you miss a deadline. Big, big consequences for you, for your attorney, for the law firm, for the client. Missing a deadline in this course, you know, it's not fun. I'm not going to say it's no big deal, but compared to the repercussions in your professional life, it's a very, very small consequence. And so feeling a little pain now by missing a deadline is actually a gift to you so that you don't get yourself in that situation where you miss a real deadline and there are real repercussions. I think most legal professionals who've practiced for very long at all have their horror story, have that deadline that they missed. I have a story like that where I missed a deadline earlier in my career. And to say it was traumatic is an understatement. There were weeks that I did not sleep very well at all, that I could hardly eat. It was completely overtook my life. I don't want you to go through that. I can't protect you completely from that. But if me giving you a little bit of tough love reduces the chances of you being in that situation at some time in your life, I want to to empower you, to give you that experience so that you won't be that miserable person or that unemployed person who experienced that. In my case, the missed deadline worked out just fine, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And so I don't want you to be in that position. So please know when I'm having these strict deadlines that I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm doing it to prepare you for the world that you're going to be entering. Another reason that I have strict deadlines is more of a practical reason. As soon as I get these documents, I need, especially over the summer, I need to turn around and grade them so that you can get comments and feedback so that your next go round, which will be the next week, you'll have that feedback so you can present better documents. The first documents that you submit in this class are probably not going to be very good. I'll be honest with you, sometimes I get good documents from the very beginning, but what happens is people do the best they can, but they're not quite sure what to do. That's okay. We're learning together. And what happens is you submit something and then I give you lots and lots of feedback and then I give you examples. This is what it's supposed to look like. And then you use that information and you present a better document next time. And then I give you more feedback and you present the next time even a better document. Well, giving all that feedback takes time. And typically in a course like this, we have 25 students. So there's a lot of effort that is required for me to give you feedback as promptly as possible. So you can see if people are submitting work late, I can't give feedback because then they could benefit from that feedback and submit a higher quality work submission, and then the people who submitted on time. And so I'm stuck not being able to grade work until everybody has submitted it, and then that means I'm not able to give the feedback as quickly as possible. It's really not possible for these types of assignments for me to grade them individually without looking at all of them together because I need to be consistent. And so literally what I do is I kind of lock myself in a room and spend several hours just going through each document. I mean, I might stop to go to the bathroom, might stop to have a drink or something, not alcoholic, of course, but a soda or something. But other than that, I'm working so that I can be consistent. So if everybody submits their assignments on a Sunday night and I grade them on Monday and you submit yours on Tuesday, I can't grade yours with the others. And so it really makes it much more difficult for me, but also much more difficult to be consistent. So those are the reasons for the policy. Now again, you may be sitting there thinking, I don't agree with them, and you're absolutely free not to, but that's what I'm going to do. So please don't ask me. Please don't ask me to get an extension. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable for both of us, and the answer is going to be no. And what I'll do is I'll say, hey, you know what? I covered this in the orientation. You might want to go back and look at the orientation. Just know the answer isn't going to be yes. And so please, please respect that. Even if you're in a very bad situation on Saturday or Sunday, my response is going to be, hey, you know what? You could have submitted it before those dates. So please, please don't put either one of us in that position. You certainly can ask, but you know what the answer is before we even get there. And so I would ask that we kind of move beyond that and not have to do that. Okay, so let's continue on. Where you're going to be spending most of your time in the course is going to be in this button called Modules. So let's go forward and click on Modules. The first module is the course orientation. This is going to be a resource that you're going to refer to many, many times. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot of stuff. Whenever you have a lot of stuff, it's hard to organize. And so part of your job during this first week is going to be to just kind of explore and click on things and find out where things are and take good notes so that you'll know where everything is that you're going to need going forward. Then I encourage you periodically through the semester to go back and explore, because what you'll probably discover is, hey, you know what? That first week I didn't understand this document here was going to be so important to me later on. And so go ahead and find those documents and then refine them, re-explore when you think, hey, you know what, I don't know how to do this. Well, probably there's an answer somewhere here on the course orientation or in the modules that you're currently working on that week. Let me pose, there's another thing I'd ask that you write down at this point. And this is something that isn't maybe going to make complete sense to you right now, but I think as we go forward, it's going to make sense, a little bit more sense. So if you could flag it now and then refer to this later on, that may be helpful. One thing that's going to happen in this course is there's going to be some times that you're doing an assignment, you're like, gosh, I'm not sure what to do. Groover didn't cover this. Or she's given me a model that's different than what she talked about. I'm confused. And your first thought may be, gosh, obviously she gave the wrong model, or gosh, that instruction she gave wasn't clear enough. I suppose that's possible, but it's probably not the case. I mean, you're welcome to send me an email to ask me, because certainly things can happen. But for the most part, it's a pretty planned out website. And so what I have done intentionally is put you in positions where you have to act like a real paralegal. In the real world, you aren't given perfect documents. I mean, this isn't a word processing class. This isn't a class that we're focused on, do you know how to use Word to the maximum level? Do you know how to do that kind of stuff? This isn't a typing class. Yes, obviously you're going to have to type. Yes, obviously you're going to have to format. Those are really important things here. But I'm not going to give you a perfect model, because if I gave you a perfect model, of course you could replicate that perfect model. That would not be college level work. That would not be the kind of work a paralegal does. That would be the kind of work that a legal secretary does. Legal secretaries are awesome and amazing and tremendous, and they will in many cases be your best friends and your closest confidants and your most important working companions in many cases. But they aren't paralegals, and what we're training you to be is a paralegal. And so if this course were simply about word processing, I would not be giving you a very good experience, because that's not what you're going to be doing. Yes, you need to know how to word process, but you also need to know how to look at a document that isn't exactly what you need and make it into the document that you do need. And so don't freak out, don't worry when you see something that isn't exactly what you're expecting. That's how it will be pretty routinely. And so if you see something you go, gosh, that's not how Groover talked about, you know what? It probably means that's something you're going to need to change. Or gosh, Groover didn't provide an example for that. Probably means you're going to go out there and find an example. That's the way it works in the real world. In most cases, as a paralegal, you're going to have to find that model. And you're probably going to find a model that's not exactly perfect. Maybe it's from a different jurisdiction. Maybe it involves different facts, or there's some other different quirk. And so you're going to have to decide how to take this imperfect model and make it into what's going to work for your client. And so that's a big, big part of this class. So as you're working, keep that in mind. Make a notation about that, and then as we go forward in the semester, refer to that when you need a little reminder. Another thing I'd ask that you write down is a really good way to do the assignments is to do them with me, almost like if you ever watched a Bob Ross painting episode. He wants you to paint along with him. And so in that type of situation, you'll be watching my video, but you'll also be doing the assignment. And most likely you'll need to pause the video from time to time and say, okay, and go back and listen to things. But it's going to be a more efficient experience for you, frankly. You're going to save time, which is a good thing. And you're probably going to have a better finished document, because there'll be lots of different points that I'm making during the presentation. If you watch it all and then do the assignment, you're going to forget some of it. You're going to need to go back and watch it again, which is fine, but you may find that not be the most productive use of your time. So watch the document, pause, start doing the things. When I talk about, for example, how to do the caption, well, actually do the caption. Pause me, then go back and watch that. Oh, yeah, that's exactly how I did. Oh, wait a second, I forgot about doing that part. If you do the assignment with me, so to speak, you're going to find that your points are going to be significantly higher. And all those little details, whether you tab, whether you capitalize, whether you bold, whether you italicize, all of those things are how you earn points. They are really, really important. This course doesn't have a lot of substance in the sense of you're not really writing a lot of stuff. There's a little bit that you'll be writing, but for the most part, you'll be formatting. And so things like, did I use the right font? Did I use a footer? Did I use the right footer? Is the size of my font correct? Do I have the right margins? All of those things are really what I'm primarily looking at. So be sure that you're watching all of those details so you can get as many points as possible on the assignments. That's another thing to note down. Be sure to be watching all of those little details. Okay, so now we're in the first module, and again, for this week and for much of this week and also for subsequent weeks, you're going to want to be paying attention to that. You'll see that we'll have typically 2 lectures here for Module 1, and this is where you'll want to start. I don't know yet whether I'll have 1 or 2 lectures, maybe even 3, but this is where you get started, so you'll watch this. Obviously, you found this because you're watching and listening to me now, but this is where you'll get started. This is a good resource to go to going forward. I know they're long and pretty boring. I apologize, but if you get stuck and like, I'm not sure what to do, go back and watch the lecture. Maybe, have something else going on as well so that you can perk up when you get to the part that's important to you. Usually when I get questions about the course, in most cases I've already answered those questions somewhere in this course orientation module. And again, because this course is about you being that organized person who takes data and processes it in the way that it needs to be processed, most of the time when you ask me, hey, how do I do this? I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I cover that in the orientation module. So why don't you go and find the answer? That's what I'm going to say. Not because I don't know the answer, not because I want to be difficult, but because I want you to have that experience of, I'm responsible for finding that information. Because that's the real world. In the real paralegal world, you don't go to the attorney and say, now what's our deadline for that? Or, oh, where do I find that model? You're the one who's going out and finding that stuff. And so the good thing about this course is I have all the stuff for you in the modules, but the challenge is you finding it and you figuring out how to use that information. So remember these as resources for you, not just this first week, but throughout the course if you need a little refresher on something. Let's go to our next section. These are assigned materials. These are assigned materials for Module 1, so be sure to participate in these materials. And you can see the first assignment is read all the material in Module 1. So this means that you're going to need to go down and read everything that's here, and everything that's here, and everything that's here. So there's a lot to read this time. As you know, there's no textbook for this course. This is the textbook. You probably won't read as much in this class as you will read in other classes, but there is a fair amount to read. It's a little deceptive in that it's all posted here, but you do need to read it, and you need to refer to it from time to time. So as you're reading it, take some careful notes. You'll want to talk about, well, now what's the stuff in this PowerPoint? What do I need to know here? What are the frequently asked questions? Which are the ones that I want to flag and remember some particular information? All of these items you'll want to take some notes about so that you can refer to later on. So like when you have a question about, gosh, I don't know what font I'm supposed to use. Well, guess what? The answer is going to be here somewhere. And so it's a good idea for you to have some careful notes so that you don't have to click on everything to find that particular information. If you read documents once well and take careful notes, you actually end up saving time in the long run. So take this seriously. Keep your notebook out while you're reading these materials so that you can refer to them later on. Okay, so the first item is to read all the material in Module 1. Then you can see that we have 2 boot camp videos. I will tell you, and this is another thing I'd ask that you make a notation as you're taking notes, is that there is I like to think of it as kind of 2 aspects to this course. One part is the document preparation that you do. I'll be honest with you, there's nothing hard about the documents we do. I mean, there are a few things that people miss pretty routinely, early on especially, but if you want to get close to perfect scores, it's very, very doable. I show you how to do it pretty much. And so students who have the luxury of spending a good amount of time on the assignment will find that on the document assignments, they will usually do quite well. It's not at all unusual for me to have students who get perfects virtually every time. Not everybody does that, but that's a pretty common thing. And it is well within the skill set of somebody who wants to do well to do that well. The grammar, though, is harder. I will be honest with you. We have the documents, which are pretty straightforward to do. But the grammar, some of us have maybe received excellent grammar instruction when we were in school. And so, or maybe we just have a grammar gene that kicks in and lets us excel in that. Others of us are going to struggle with this material. You probably know which category you're in right now. And if you are in the, gosh, I've got grammar in good shape, awesome, wonderful, congratulations. This will make the course significantly easier for you. Having said that, I will tell you that it's a pretty rare person who knows all of these grammar rules kind of automatically. Even if you knew them once, if it's been a few years since you were in high school, you probably need a little bit of a refresher. So don't get too cocky. I'll be honest with you. I've taught this course for lots and lots of semesters. I still review some of the grammar rules, some of the more nitpicky rules. And so I encourage you to take it seriously and to pay attention, even if grammar is your thing. If it's not your thing, you're going to want to watch these videos probably several times. They're short. Each one of these videos is probably about 3 to 5 minutes long. But getting familiar with the ideas, also using your Aspen grammar book, looking at that. And then I have lots of other tools. The grammar is the hard part of this course. Grammar is where people lose points. And many times people find, you know what, I'm just not getting it. That please come to my office hours. This is another thing I ask that you flag here. Come to my office hours. I routinely have students who are struggling, either with the grammar or the documents, who come to my office hours and a light goes off. Oh, I get it. And from then on, they're awesome, amazing, perfect, not perfect, but very good students. I had one student, this was in my legal writing course. This student was struggling with the grammar. I give students a test, and she had one of the lowest grades on that pre-test. And one of the concepts that she really struggled with was passive voice. She couldn't identify it, she couldn't fix it. I did a presentation in class, and she was present, and I know that she was paying attention because she's a very conscientious person, but it didn't seem like it clicked. She didn't get really much better. She was frustrated, and understandably so, because this was a real impediment to her success in the course. Anyway, she came to see me one day, and we spent about 10 minutes. It was a super short meeting. Usually I spend more time with students, but she had some place that she needed to go, so we just had about 10 minutes. I spent that 10 minutes going over passive voice. A light bulb went off in her head. She said to me at the time, wow, I get this now. And I thought at the time, well, that's nice that she said that. She's just saying that to make me feel good. Maybe she's made a little progress, but I thought she's probably still going to struggle with it. Well, the next class we did a passive voice quiz. In the previous, this was the second one in the course, the previous one, she had gotten almost all of them wrong. I mean, the ones she got right, I think she just got right because of luck. She got virtually a perfect score. She had, if not the highest score, one of the very highest scores. She still struggled with other aspects of the grammar. It wasn't that she was kind of cured of grammar phobia or anything, but she continued throughout the semester to be able to identify passive voice very, very reliably. So she's an amazing student. She made amazing progress. That can be you if you're willing. I'm not saying we can fix it in 10 minutes. It may be in 30 minutes or an hour, but I will be happy to work with you to get you there. Just keep in mind that if something is due on Sunday night, I'm not going to be able to work with you on Sunday or even Saturday or probably even Friday. So you'll have to plan that out so that we can get you ready for those types of tasks. I provide a great deal of support to students who come to see me during my office hours, and I have both face-to-face office hours and virtual office hours. So there's no excuse for not coming to see me. So anyway, so these grammar boot camps are about 3 to 5 minute videos to watch, and again, watch multiple times. And then I also have parts of the Aspen handbook that are assigned. And you can see there are several pages that are assigned. These are not designed for a quick read once and then go about your business. You will need to read these several times, play with them several times, think about them several times, look at the sentences again and again. If that is a grammar concept that is not familiar to you or something that doesn't kind of automatically make sense to you. So don't treat this as a read once and done situation. Okay, we have several assignments here. That won't be here when you're seeing this. This will not be something that you'll see at this point. So when you go in here and you see this, this is something that will become available after the due date. So we have an introductions discussion board. I'm going to click on this just so you can see what that's like. Oh, actually, you can't see it yet because I haven't opened it up. Sorry about that. Ordinarily, if we were in the week that it was due, you would have seen the discussion board and you would start an item, start a post. We'll talk more about what goes into a discussion board when we get later on in the course. But as a general rule, and again, you want to flag this, there will be 3 posts that you'll make on each discussion board. You'll have a substantive post. That'll be your main post. It will need to be several sentences long, and it will be graded on its the quality of your submission. And then you'll typically make 2 reply posts, and these will need to be, they can be much shorter, but they need to say something other than "I like your post." Something along, you need to be substantive. You'll need to respond. You might say, "I agree with you when you say this, and this is why I agree with you," or "I disagree with you." And by the way, I especially like reply posts that aren't controversial for the sake of being controversial. And we always want to be very polite, of course, and respectful, but just to present a different perspective can be very helpful. So I like comments that begin, "Thank you for your post. I had a little bit different reaction to that topic. Let me share with you what I got out of that," or something along those lines. So you'll make the main post into reply posts. Each one of these will be worth 5 points. I have that will be worth 5 points because your discussion boards are worth 5% of your grade. These are both the easiest points and the hardest points to get. They're the easiest in that as long as you really try and you follow the instructions and you have them be reasonably long, you're going to get all 5 points. I mean, it has to be a genuine effort, but I'm not going to. There might be 1 or 2 that I grade a little more strictly, but very few of them will I grade very strictly at all. Where students typically lose points is when their responses are too short or they forget to do 1 or more reply posts. And so, so in a sense, these are pretty gimme points. If you do it, you're going to be fine. On the assignments, you'll lose points even when you submit them, and you might not get a very good grade even though you tried. But for discussion boards, if you try, if you make a real effort, you're going to do just fine on those. So that's what makes the discussion boards easy. What makes discussion boards hard is that, especially over the summer, you have typically 2 or maybe even 3 sometimes discussion boards that you need to participate in. And so you have to remember to do them. And you can't do all of your discussion boards posts on the Sunday. So you have to kind of plan it out over the week so that you submit all of your discussion boards as you need to. And so it's not a huge amount of points, and it's not unusual for people to forget. This is the one thing that you can't do ahead. All the other assignments, I encourage you actually to do them ahead, at least a rough draft ahead. And that's especially important over the summer because most likely you're taking some vacation time or other tasks, times that you won't be available. Discussion boards, though, become available at 12:01 a.m. on Monday, and they close at 11:59 p.m. on Sunday. So you just have 1 week. So especially if you are on a more than week-long vacation, you probably will miss a discussion board, maybe even 2 or 3. That's okay. These are not big sources of points. We have, I think, 15 discussion boards, maybe 14 discussion boards, and you can see they're only worth 5 points, 5% of your grade. So missing a whole discussion board isn't even going to come close to dropping your grade even 1%. So you can miss a discussion board without it being a big deal. Most students do miss 1 or 2. Some even miss more than that. So don't panic if you miss a discussion board. Know whatever discussion boards that you see available in a particular week, they're all going to go away on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. Again, you'll be able to see the due dates in the calendar feature. Okay, so that's how the discussion board is going to work. Then we have an assignment here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Punctuation, Grammar, Proofreading Assignment, Module 1. This also won't be here. This is just, not sure what that is. So this is what it's going to look like. So the first thing is, here are some global instructions. You'll see the instructions are the same throughout the semester. I'm just going to click on this so you can see what it looks like. This is kind of important because how you complete this assignment is important. Keep in mind that I will be grading 25 of these submissions let me first of all talk about what is the grammar. Let me pull up the grammar proofreading assignment first so you can see an example of what one looks like. So I'm going to go here. Okay, and this is actually what the assignment is. So I'm going to click on this. So this is what the document looks like, and you're going to go through and you're going to proof it. You're going to get into the correct format. Typically, there are about 2 or 3 paragraphs. They're always just 1 page. And so we're going to go through, and you're going to go through and proof it. As you can imagine, there's lots of different ways of correcting a document that is incorrect. I mean, there's some that are fairly obvious. If the initial writer forgot to capitalize the first word in a sentence, well, obviously you're going to capitalize it. So there's a few errors that there's really just one way of fixing it, but most of the time there's going to be more than one way of fixing it. And so you can imagine that for me to grade consistently, I have to have a methodology that allows me, okay, well, that's an error, that's not an error, that's a whole point off, that's not a whole point off. And so before I even look at the first assignment, I've established how I'm going to grade it. As a result, you're looking for how can you get the most points out of the assignment. I mean, that's what your focus is. It's what reasonably your focus ought to be. And so I'm going to give you some advice about how to maximize it. A couple of things, or several things. The first thing is, when you it's important to note how you make changes. Most students are very good about doing this, especially after the first week. But there's always 1 or 2 or 3 students who takes them a little bit longer to catch on to how to do this. The longer it takes you, the more points you're going to be losing. So let's talk about how we do this. Whenever you take away something that is there, you're going to cross it out. You're going to use the strike-through font. Let me show you how to do that. So what you do is you highlight the text. Okay, so now it's gray. That tells you it's highlighted. And then I go up here to Word and I click on, you see where it says ABC was strike through, and now it's struck through. I unclick it, it goes away. It's possible that, depending upon the version of Word that you have, that it may not be listed up here as one of your options. Another way to do that then is to click on this box right here. Go in here, and then this will show you additional choices. I'm going to click on the strike through option, and that's another way for me to strike through. So I have 2 tools here with my version of Word. Either one will be just fine. So you need to strike through the part that you want to remove. You don't just fix it, because you see the problem here is Mary and Bob sing. It shouldn't be sings. So if I were doing it in the real world, I would just I would just get rid of the S, right? I mean, that fixes it. But as you can imagine, as I'm grading 25 documents, it's really hard for me to see the corrections that you've made if you just make the correction. And so you have to strike through what was there before, and now you're going to, after it, write what you want to add. So let me go back. And now I'm going to do sings. That's what I want. But again, I'm going to want to bring attention to it. So I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to put it in red font. You may not have red as your first choice, so you're going to go here and pick a red. I would ask you to pick a pretty obnoxious red. Don't pick a maroon or a pink or something like that. Pick the most obnoxious red you have, because your goal here is to make it really super easy for me to see. And then I'm going to bold it too. So those are the 3 things. I'm not sure I bolded. I guess it is bold. Okay, so those are the 3 steps. Striking out the stuff that I want to go away, putting the new stuff I'm adding in red, and putting it also in bold. Those 3 things. There are assignments that you'll be doing that if you miss 1 or more of those, you will be losing points. So don't be the person who loses points in that way. I have a typo here, I apologize. Okay, another thing that sentence people do is they want to do this. Here, let me go back. Sentence people do this. They say, well, let's they might just say, well, all I have to remove is the S, so I'm just going to strike that out. Well, that becomes very difficult for me to see. As you can see, it's hard to see whether that S has a line through it or not. And your goal is to make your changes really easy for me to see, because the last thing you want is to make a change and you don't get credit for it. And so instead of changing something within a word, you make the whole word go away and then you retype it. So even if it were a really long word, let's say alphabetical. Let's say I misspell the word alphabetical. Well, I guess there's a temptation to just mark out the last two letters and correct it, but instead what I'm going to do is strike through it and rewrite the whole word. Right. That's even true if, let's say, I had the wrong punctuation. Let me go back. So let's say I have the words written correctly, but I put a period, but it ends up that while I'm editing, I think, gosh, I shouldn't have a period there. I should have a comma there instead. Well, I might be tempted to just strike out that period, right? Do that. Well, again, that's hard to see. We don't want to do that. Instead, what we want to do is strike out the whole word adjacent to whatever the punctuation is that I don't think is right. And then to rewrite the word and the comma. So those are some important things to keep in mind. If you fail to do those things, you're giving away points. These are easy ways to maximize your points, so be aware of those items. So one thing is to make sure that you're marking your changes as clearly as possible. The other thing that is important to keep in mind is don't over-edit. People lose points because of over-editing in two ways. One way they lose points is they take a perfectly good sentence and then they edit it and they add a problem that wasn't already there. For example, let's say we take this sentence, Mary and Bob sings the school fight song. And let's say I do this. I say, well, I'm just going to make the whole sentence go away. And I'm going to retype it. And I'm going to put it in red and bold. Okay. Well, I fixed this problem here, but I've added an S. Well, I've changed the meaning. So now it means something different than it meant originally. So I've made an error through making this change that was unnecessary. And so sometimes when you make too many changes or you change things wholesale, you in fact will cause yourself to lose points by creating an error that wasn't already there. The other problem is it's very hard for me to know what you've changed. Now I have to go back and compare. Well, Mary is the same, Mary's the same, and is the same, and is the same, Bob is the same, Bob is the same. See, oh, here, this is what you changed. You can see how it's going to take me a lot longer to do that. It's going to be rare that you're going to need to remove an entire sentence. In fact, the only time that you even kind of need to even approach that is when we're making passive voice changes. And even there, you don't need to remove entire sentences. So please, in your mind, just make a notation right here in your notes, if you would. Don't remove entire sentences with the possible exception of passive voice fixes. Everything else, don't do it. Go through each word. If you think Bob shouldn't be capitalized, just mark out Bob. Even if you think there are 4 errors in this sentence, address each one of the errors separately and mark out the word and then afterwards do the correct word. don't do the whole sentence. So that's one way that people, by over editing, they lose points is when they rewrite stuff, they add errors. But that's not the more common way. The more common way is that they rewrite it and they rewrite out the thing that I was trying to check for. So for example, in this sentence, what I was trying to show is when you have a compound subject, you should use a plural verb, right? But let's say instead I had rewritten the sentence to be, they sing the school fight song. Well, there are two problems with this. One is, oh, I'm sorry, didn't mean to do that. One is that they've changed the meaning. We went from Mary and Bob to they. Of course, Mary and Bob do mean they. There's two people there. But I don't know if you understand that Mary and Bob, when you have a compound subject, requires a plural verb. I get that you know that when we use they, you need to use a plural verb. That's if you're a fluent English speaker, your ear just tells you that. So you haven't demonstrated the skill that I was trying to show. So in this case, even though this sentence is correct, you're not going to get the point for correcting sings. So my piece of advice, and please write this down, is to approach this edit with the philosophy of, I'm going to make the fewest number of changes that I can. I'm only going to change grammar problems or the very few style problems that the teacher has instructed me to change. The two big style problems that we correct are going to be no contractions and no passive voice. But anything else I see, I'm just going to go with it, even if it's not well written. If it's not grammatically wrong, I'm going to stay with it. And the way that I like to approach this is consider that you're editing your boss's work. Your boss isn't a very good writer, but he's your boss or she's your boss. And this boss has sensitive feelings. And so you want to make the absolute fewest number of changes you have to. Just enough changes so your boss is not humiliated in front of the court, even if it's not well written, because you know your boss is going to be upset if you do too many changes. So keep that in mind. Challenge yourself before you make any change. Why am I making that change? What is the rule? Where can I find in the Aspen book the rule that tells me I need to do this? And if you can't find it, then you probably ought not be making that change. And again, you ought to change the absolute minimum number of words that you have. Don't rely upon don't say, well, gee whiz, it would sound better if I wrote it this way. You might well be right. Many times when people rewrite complete sentences, they actually are improving it. Many times they're not. We in this class don't get into more sophisticated editing approaches. We'll cover those in legal writing. But in this course, we're really not going to get into that stuff. That's beyond the scope of this class. So as soon as you start thinking, gosh, that doesn't sound well, it would sound better this way, but I don't see any rules that are being violated, that tells you, wait a second, don't need to do this in this particular course. Again, when you watch the video, you'll get a lot more specific. So this video is going to give you more information. This video right here is going to give you more information. Some helpful hints as you're doing this assignment. So here's the actual assignment. I recommend that you blow up your font to about 20, and you might even want to double space it. Some people like to print it out. Some people don't. That's your choice, whatever you find easier. Also, let Word help you. You'll be able to see in here that Word is going to tell you some things that aren't so great here. By the way, I'm going to get that paragraph thing fixed. So you can see, as you're looking here, it's telling you something might not be right here. It's telling you something might not be right here. It's telling you something might not be right here. Word isn't always going to be correct. They're going to identify problems sometimes that don't exist, but more commonly they're going to miss problems that do exist. But use it. It will give you some good information. Another thing to think about is this little paragraph sign. So now we're still in the home area. You see where the paragraph, the backwards P is. Click on that, and this will give you formatting information. This is a very useful tool. I'm going to pretend that I had an extra space here. Without this formatting thing here, this is the way you would ordinarily look at the text, it isn't going to be immediately obvious that we have an extra space. Now, Word will tell you, hey, why do you have an extra space here? But if you weren't using Word, you wouldn't see this. But if you put that paragraph sign, each one of those dots in the middle here represents a space. And again, this represents an enter key right here, a paragraph key. And so this lets you say, hey, wait a second, I've got two. I didn't mean to have two. And so you can get rid of it. So that's a helpful thing to use probably near the end of your task. And let's just think about this for a second. Let's say that you actually do have an extra space. How would you correct that? What you're going to do is you're going to mark through this material, then you're going to retype it, and you have it corrected. Of course, when you're ready to submit it, you will go ahead and drop it back, Times New Roman 12 font. Also. Anyway, okay. So those are just some things to keep in mind as you're working on the projects. Probably it's even perhaps more important for this than for subsequent projects is that I will give you detailed comments in the comment section, and it will tell you the errors that you made, what you failed to correct, and that can be some of the most useful material so that next time, oh, okay, I didn't understand there was an error, or I didn't know how to fix that, or I didn't realize how I was supposed to fix that. The first assignment or two, it's not a big deal if you miss points. You're there for that experience of learning it. If your first one or two assignments aren't the best grades, no worries. You can learn from those and do well in the other assignments, and you will do very, very well in the course. So look upon those not so much caring about what grade did I get, but what did I do wrong and how can I avoid making that error next time? So the comments are really, really important. I provide comments, and usually those are numbers where I will list a series of numbers that either indicate the things you got right or the things that you missed, depending upon which type of assignment it is. And then there is a code that I post within the module where the assignment came from, and that I will open that up once I grade the assignments. And so you'll need to look in both places. You'll need to look in the comments, and you'll need to look in the code section. Now, sometimes people just look at the comments that they themselves missed. Maybe you did really well on assignment 4, and I only gave you 2 comments. Awesome, wonderful, congratulations. And so those are the only 2 comments that you look at. Okay, I mean, that's good that you looked at the comments, but I would encourage you to look at all of the comments, because just because you didn't make that mistake on assignment 4 that somebody else made, on assignment 5 you may make that mistake, so it's a good process for you to make sure that you look at all the comments. Another reason candidly to look at all the comments is sometimes I miss. You may have committed error 14 and I just don't see it, but probably I'll see it next time. And so if you've read all the comments, you can go, oh, wait a second, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. Okay, well, I now know, so next time I submit an assignment I won't do that. So read the comments, and also we'll submit a key that shows you how the document ought to ideally look. Again, none of these documents is there one magical way to submit it. There's definitely different ways of doing certain aspects of it. But this gives you a good example of a successful submission. Look at that, and when you look at it, if you're not sure why it looks the way it does, or you're not sure how to make your document look the way it does, look the way that I created, then please come see me so we can get you to that point. Another item I want to pause for here is to remind you, all of our documents need to be in Microsoft Word. You may not use any other word processing program. You may not PDF your documents. I need to be able to see all those spaces. What I will do when I get one of your documents is I will go in here and I will turn on the paragraph sign and I will look to see all of those ins and outs. How did you indent this? You can see in this case I actually moved the margin. I could have done this. That would have been a perfectly good way of doing it as well. Or I could have done this. Now, if you had PDF the document, I wouldn't be able to just look at it and know, well, did you hit the space bar lots of times, or did you hit the tab button, or did you change your margins? I wouldn't be able to tell. And so a PDF doesn't work. A document can look absolutely perfect, but if you haven't formatted it correctly, you're going to lose points. So even though this looks the same as this, this person who tabbed it, I hit the tab button right here, that's what happened. If you look in my key, the tab button, that person is going to get credit for it. But if you instead hit the space bar, lots of times you're not going to get points. That's not an appropriate way to indent. Spaces are just between words. So it's important that I be able to see the formatting. So you do need to use Word. Another reason that you need to use Word, I mean, obviously you have to use Word in part because it's the word processor that I have access to, and you obviously don't want to use a word processing tool that I don't have because I can't grade at them. So that's a practical reason, but a more important reason is that a Microsoft Word is what legal professionals use. In order to be employable as a paralegal, you need to have a pretty sophisticated understanding of Microsoft Word. If you haven't gotten to that point yet, I encourage you to start working on that. Even if you don't have access to Microsoft Word at your home, on your home computer and your work computer, you can go to any of the computer labs at Collin with your student ID and get experience using Microsoft Word. Rent a book from the library, buy an inexpensive book from Half Price Books. I mean, you can get one, a good one, for under $15 at Half Price Books, and certainly even if you bought a new one, you shouldn't be spending more than $30 on it. And using that, becoming familiar with how to use Microsoft Word is really an essential part of your professional development. Everyone in a law office needs to use it. The attorney, the paralegal, the legal secretary, the receptionist, everyone needs a good familiarity with Microsoft Word. And so if you don't have that yet, this is the course to get you started on that process. And if you do have it, and this is an opportunity to kind of refresh those skills. So you absolutely do need to use Microsoft Word in this course. Now, sometimes people don't have access to Microsoft Word at their home, and that's fine. You could start many of these documents with another word processor that converts. So what you would do is you might start the process and then go to a computer that has Microsoft Word, and if it's one of the programs that can translate, you can translate it into Microsoft Word and do the final touches. Just be aware that when you translate it in Microsoft Word, you'll need to go through and make sure that the formatting that you used stayed, that everything is still the way it ought to be. My strong recommendation is just to work on Microsoft Word from beginning to end, but I understand sometimes that's not possible. Okay, so be sure to bookmark that. Need to submit everything in Microsoft Word. Okay, so we've talked about the discussion board, we've talked about the proofreading assignments. We have an orientation quiz. This is due on June 18. It is not for a grade, but you need to get a 90 in order to continue in the course. So you have 3 shots at it. You cannot take it more than once in a day. Really, it's all about these orientation materials. And so it's going to be things like, can you turn in late assignments? What font do we use in this course? All those rules and things along those lines. So read everything, take careful notes. While you're doing the orientation quiz, you are free to use your notes and free to go into these documents and look at them. So it's not a closed notes quiz by any means, but be sure to remember to do this and to calendar this date. Okay, now we have the orientation materials. I'm going to skip over these right now and return to them in a bit. I'm going to go over here and look at the syllabus. There's 2 ways to view documents in Canvas. One is to look at it through here. If you don't have Microsoft Word on your computer, then this is how you'll look at the documents, which is perfectly good. I happen to have Microsoft Word on my computer, and so I'm going to look at it this way. If you haven't spent time with your syllabus in your courses previously, please get in the habit of doing so. The first page, at least as they're currently configured, there's not a lot of stuff here that you need to worry about, but the first item I see that you do need to have some attention to is going to be the last date to drop the course, July 6th. Because this is a summer semester, these deadlines are closer than they are during a longer semester. I certainly hope you don't drop the course, but I also get that things happen. You get a new job, you have an illness, you realize that this isn't the right semester for you to be taking this course. Perfectly understandable. Be sure to calendar this date so that you'll know to drop the course if something happens that this isn't the right semester for you. If you're an Access student, I'm glad to work with you with respect to that. So let me know if I can be of value to you with respect to that. Here's information about me. My office is in the library building on the Preston Ridge campus, room 232. If you haven't had a chance to meet me face-to-face, I sure would like that opportunity. Please come by and see me. I would like to connect names with faces and like to get to know you, so please do so if time permits. I have office hours over the summer in 2 different times. They're both on Wednesdays. I have virtual office hours from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Virtual office hours are through Zoom. Actually, right now I am doing a Zoom lecture. I'm just taping it. And so it will be a similar format. Everything that you see here, everything on my screen you can see during a Zoom meeting. You won't see my face. I won't necessarily see your face unless you want to use a webcam, but we can talk about documents and get everything done through Zoom. When you want to come to my office hours, you just come to the syllabus here and you click on this link. This is if you are using a PC or a Mac, or you're on your iPhone or your Android phone. You click on this, but you can also connect in a few different ways. There's other ways to connect as well. However you connect, though, you'll want to make sure you have access to a screen, because unless you have a question about, something that doesn't require a screen, which is also fine. But that's how it works. I will most likely not be in my office hours. I won't be in my office during my office hours. I'll probably be doing it from home. It's the summer and I've got kids, so don't try to call me at my office number. But we can use Zoom just like a telephone. If you have any difficulties connecting through Zoom, and by the way, Zoom is super easy, then just email me during my office hours and we'll figure out what's going on and see if we can get things squared away. If not, then we can talk over the phone and figure out what to happen, how we can get you the help that you need. I provide a lot of support during my office hours, so please come. Occasionally, students will come just to introduce themselves, and boy, that really makes my day. That communicates to me, this is a serious student. This is a professional student. This is a student who knows how to be successful in the professional environment. So it's a really, really impressive thing. I do have face-to-face office hours. They're after another class that I have. I'm teaching contracts this summer. So if you're in my contracts class, awesome. Just stick around with me after class and we'll have office hours. I'd be glad to support you with your assignments. If you don't have a class with me, you're also welcome to come. I will be having my office hours not in my office, but in the classroom. This is the LH building is Lawler Hall. It's on the Preston Ridge campus in room 131. And it's from 10:10 to 11:10. So feel free to come. If you do come to my office hours, email me your draft document or bring it on a thumb drive so that we'll have something to work from, so that I'll be able to respond to your questions. And then the last choice is by appointment. I recognize that over the summer, sometimes people's hours are crazy, and these times I pick them because I think they're times that will work for lots of folks. But I recognize nothing works for everyone, so we can schedule a different time that might be more convenient for you. I provided my office number, but I will be honest with you, I'm not going to be in my office this summer. There's just no need for me to be in my office because my office hours are in a classroom and virtual. And so weeks may go by and I'm not in my office. So please email me when you want to communicate with me. And you are welcome to email me. In fact, I encourage you to email me. Just keep in mind that emails are great for saying, hey, when can we meet? Or um, uh, I think there may be a problem with document X or something like that. Emails are a really, really clunky tool for answering substantive questions like, I'm not quite sure what to do on this assignment. Send me an email so we can schedule a time where we can get together and talk about it. I'm not going to be able to give detailed instructions, obviously, via email. A good rule of thumb is if you think that my answer, before you send an email, in which you're not just asking to schedule a meeting or something like that, two good questions to ask yourself. First of all is, can I find this information somewhere else? So if it's a due date question, think about where would I be able to find the date? Or if it's a question about what font I'm supposed to use, something like that, is it available to me somewhere else? Because that's what I'm going to refer you to, so might as well just skip that step if you can. The second thing is it something that Groover would be able to answer in 3 sentences or less? If you think it's going to take more than 3 sentences for me to answer, or if I think it's going to take more than 3 sentences to answer, I'm very likely to say, hey, great question, let's schedule a time. When can we meet? So that we can get into the nitty-gritty. Going back and forth with email usually takes a lot more time, and oftentimes it's much more frustrating for the student than if we had just had a 5 or 10 minute telephone call or meeting, resolve the question and move forward. So emails are awesome, can be very effective, but aren't great at everything. Few things in life are great at everything. I want to also flag that and you may want to, depending upon your usage in the past, you may want to flag this one because occasionally I'll have students that forget. Some students like to send me course messages. It says through Blackboard, it's actually through Canvas here. That they use this to actually, this inbox here. Please don't do that. I don't check that. I like to have all of my emails through my Cougar web. So send it to me at cgroover@collin.edu. I organize all of my emails into various folders, and I can't do those same functionalities through the Canvas inbox. So I won't see it, and so obviously it won't work for you. So don't do that. Send it to cgroover@collin.edu instead. There's only one textbook for this course, and many of y'all will already own the textbook because it is the textbook that we use in intro and other courses. You will see possibly that the textbook authors or the text publishers have created a new edition of the textbook. I think maybe the new edition might be rolling out in the fall. I can't remember for sure. Don't worry about having the latest and greatest edition. I'm actually use the green edition. I don't even have the latest and greatest. If you have the latest and greatest, or maybe even an older edition, some of the page numbers may not be perfectly correct. So consider, hey, you know what, this section is supposed to be about passive voice. Oh, wait a second. These pages don't completely fit with passive voice. Probably I need to look, adjust the page numbers, maybe 1 or 2 pages one way or another. If you think that the page numbers have dramatically changed in the latest edition, send me an email and I will order a copy of the new edition and use that or update the page numbers. So I definitely don't want you to be at a loss for where to find that information. That is the only textbook that is assigned. Sometimes students like to go above and beyond and use actual legal form books. It's not a requirement for the course, but certainly it can add another level of professionalism to your submission. There are several different form books. If you want to use them, you'll need to go to one of 2 places. Well, actually there's more than 2 places, but probably the easiest 2 places for you to go would be either the Spring Creek Library or to my office. In my office, I will have some of all of those documents, and I'll be glad to show you how to use those form books. Paralegals routinely use these form books as well as attorneys, so they're very good things to have experience with. I mean, they're outrageously expensive. You absolutely should not consider buying them even on a used basis, but using them in the library would be a very fine choice. If you find, hey, I just can't find a model that's going to work, you aren't expected to use these resources, but certainly you can. So this could be a plan B if you really feel like you would benefit from that. Going forward, you can see, so let me just highlight this as another item. You need to use Microsoft Word. If you don't already have some pretty good skills, get a book. I have a book I use. There's lots of good ones out there. You can also just Google stuff, and you can use YouTube videos. So you don't even have to buy a book, but that can be a smart investment. And then you'll also need some kind of calendaring tool. Some people like electronic ones, some people like paper ones. Whatever works for you is what works for you. But you do definitely need to do that. And in fact, when you're done with this lecture, my suggestion is you set aside about an hour to write in all the due dates and come up with a plan for when you're going to get everything accomplished. Don't let this week pass and you not have done that. It's a recipe for disaster, I can tell you. I've dealt with enough students who've come back and said, oh, if only I had calendared this stuff, to know that that is a smart strategy. Okay, so here's the breakdown of points. Sometimes students don't pay attention to this, and I hope that you won't be one of those students, because deciding what counts the most is going to influence where you spend most of your time. I've already talked about the class participation, which is the discussion board, is only 5%. It's pretty easily earned 5%, but obviously if you have a choice between doing the document preparation and the discussion board, well, obviously you're going to want to do the document preparation. That's 50%. So be smart. I recognize that your time is very precious. You don't have as much as you would like. You have competing um, people pulling for your time, your boss, your spouse, your children, your dog, your vacation plans, your parents. I mean, lots of different people want a piece of your time. I want a piece of your time, but I know I'm not always going to come in first in that tug of war. I shouldn't in certain situations. So you have to be smart. If in a particular week you look and go, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do all this, spend your time in the most important areas. For example, many people find that the grammar convention assignments take as much time as a document preparation, but you can see it's only worth 1/5 as much in terms of points. It's actually worth more like 40% as much, because we have only half as many English convention assignments. These are the proofreading assignments that we were talking about before, where we were talking about, you know, highlighting things in red and using strike through. That's what the proofreading or grammar convention assignments are. So they're actually, since there's fewer of them, actually more like 20% compared to 50%. But they're not worth as much. And especially if you're a person who struggles with the grammar, you may find it more important to do the document prep. You can skip all of the grammar assignments and only lose a single letter grade. If you skip very many of these document preps, you are looking at dropping several letter grades. Don't do it. So do these first well, and then if time permits, do the other items. You can see that the midterms and finals have a relatively low weight in this course. I mean, you don't want to skip them, but compared, even in combination, compared to the document prep, they're much less important. They're only 35%. You could skip both of those tests and do really well in everything else and pass the course. So you don't want to do that, of course, but the document prep is where this case is all about. And this is somewhat different. Most of our courses in the paralegal program are more about tests and less about assignments, but this is a difference. Here's some information about online learning. If this is your first online course, I encourage you to use these tools and get comfortable with these tools so that you'll meet with success. Here's some information about technical things. I can see I haven't updated all these. They still refer to Blackboard in a few places. I apologize. But just interpret it to be Canvas. And if you have any problems with your computer, just know that you have access to the computer lab at Collin. There's a computer lab on all 3 of the major campuses. Class participation, this is about the discussion board. Again, there needs to be 3 substantive posts and one what I call substantive posts and 2 reply posts. Keep in mind these pointers, these are rarely issues in this course, but I will tell you the discussion board for Module 2 is the one that occasionally people will post things that are a little bit off color. I try to run a really G-rated class, so please no profanity, nothing off color or suggestive. Sometimes people will post things with initials that are of a naughty word, and so I would ask that you not do that. Keep it so that if your grandmother or your minister or rabbi or other religious leader were reading it, they would not think anything less of you for having posted that. So be courteous and respectful and keep everything G. If there's a question mark, go ahead and pick something else to discuss and keep it so there's no question mark in your mind. Let's go here to assignment submissions. As I said before, everything needs to be in Word, which means it needs to have an extension of .doc or .docx. Any other extension on the end of your document name means that it won't work. I don't accept documents in either format. I don't accept PDFs. I just won't grade them. You'll get a 0 on it. So don't do it. If you don't have access to Word for a given week, do the assignment earlier, or accept the fact that you're not going to get any points for that particular read. I know I've said it before, but I don't grade late assignments. If you haven't written that down yet, please write it down. That's not an option in this course. You have all the due dates from day 1, so there's no reason to ever have a late assignment. Typographical errors are a big deal. That's where you lose points. Everybody does them. You'll see I do them, so I'm not here to, I guess I'm here to say do as I do, not as I say, or do as I say, not as I do. But you know, you want to watch it to the extent that you can have as few as possible. Examinations. Examinations are hard in this course. The document assignments are relatively easy. If you follow the guidance, especially if you come and see me, you're going to do really well on those. But the midterms and the final exam are more challenging. So some students do really well on the document assignments, and so they think, oh, I'm doing so well, the midterm and the final will be a breeze. They go and they take the test, they don't do so well. Don't assume that it's the same experience. I'm testing different things on the midterm and the final exam. And I mean, there's some overlap for sure, but there's also other things that I'm testing. And so watch, I give a pretty detailed description of what's going to be on each test. Look at those items, focus on those. I have a tool available for students who are not local, and it's ProctorU. This is a way to take the midterm and the final exam that is not, if you're not local. Let's say you are in the south of France for the summer. Awesome, yeah, I wish you had taken me. But in any event, I'm here in Frisco, and obviously you don't want to come all the way to Collin County to take your final. No worries, you can take your final and your midterm in the south of France via ProctorU. You just need to tell me at least 5 days before the first day that the test is available. And because there are steps that we need to take in order to get everything set up. And so it's nothing too onerous, but just let me know that that is what you'll be needing to do, and we'll be glad to set that up. I have information here about the cost. The fee for each use varies depending upon the length of time that you use to take the test. My guess is that you would not be near the lower end of it. You'd probably be in the $20 to $30 range. Again, a lot less expensive than an airplane ticket to Collin County though. So again, this can be a smart resource for you to use if you're not going to be local. On the other hand, if you just don't want to drive to the Preston Ridge campus, you're probably going to find it's cheaper for you to drive to the Preston Ridge campus than for you to do ProctorU. You can take the tests on either the Central Park or Spring Creek campus if you prefer. That's definitely an option. Let me know if you're going to do that though, so I can make the test available in those places. Here is our calendar. So this is a repetition of the information that you find in the calendar on Canvas. This might be an easy way for you to jot down all of the due dates and things along those lines. Going to make all of these spaces go away. Here we go. So you'll see the due dates and you can just calendar those. You'll see that we do more than one module a week in many cases. We have a total of 15 modules and we have only, I think, 9 or 10 weeks. So this first week, for example, we're doing 2 modules. Second week, we're doing 2 modules. Third week, we're only doing 1 module, and so forth. So some will be 1, some will be 2 weeks. That is the end of the syllabus information. Again, refer to it as you need. At this point, I'm going to end this lecture and then start another lecture on another, or start another lecture in another file. So be sure to watch that. Thank you for your attention and have a wonderful day.